Hey guys, I had a discussion with my children a while back about the difference in science, technology, and engineering. And the way I explained it to them was science is merely a collection of facts, theorems. It tells you what happens. Technology guy takes that science and says, I can make a machine out of it, or I can make something out of it. The engineer actually makes a product taking into account safety, comfort, noise, vibration, efficiency of manufacturing, keeping the cost in control. So a video popped on my feed a few days ago. You may have seen it, where a professor of physics had a giant pendulum, one of those wrecking balls, swing inches from his face, and he left it, and the pendulum swung back and it came back, and it became a viral video because the professor was so confident that the ball will not hit his face. And I think the caption said only a scientist could attempt like this. And I completely agree with that, because if you think about the science of it, the pendulum has potential energy when it's swung to one side because of the difference in height, and when it comes down at the lowest point, it has no potential energy but very high kinetic energy because it's moving fast, and then it goes to the other side. Over a period of time, it's going to slow down and stop because of friction, air friction from the cable. In no way its energy is going to increase, and in no way it's going to go further and hit the professor's face. So I don't know what the intention of that video was. Actually, I do, but I'm pretty sure the group in that class was fairly aware of the law of conservation of energy and how a pendulum works, so they probably didn't need that experiment. If they did, that's a more serious condition. But if so, that's science tells you that a pendulum swings at a specific interval, with a certain amplitude. Regardless of the amplitude, the frequency is the same for a pendulum. The technology guy takes that and says, okay, I can change it, turn it into a timepiece and make a watch out of it. And then the engineer actually takes a technology and builds a watch that is easy to carry, safe, things like that, cheap to build. An engineer would never attempt something like what the physics professor did, and here's why. Taking safety into account, the cable is at its maximum tension when it's at its lowest point. At that point, the tension is basically equal to the weight of the ball plus the centrifugal force exerted by the ball. I believe it's mv square by r. Anyway, it's at a very high tension, and at that point, if the anchor fails at the roof, or if the cable snaps, the results can be lethal. In shipping and in yard industries, most industrial accomplishments that we have, accidents are very common. When there are large systems under extreme amount of pressure, when they hold a lot of energy, and if they fail, the cables, when they snap on a ship, for example, they can cut people into half. So hopefully this pendulum didn't have that much energy, but it had a lot of energy. If the cable snapped, it would have easily injured multiple students in that hall. And there is no telling which way the energy will go once it's released. It's like an explosion. So an engineer would not do that because of the safety of others. Two, the engineer would not do that because of the safety of the person experimenting himself. It's right, it's correct that the pendulum will not swing past its initial position, but what if the professor sneezed or fainted or slipped? You know, accidents do happen. So an engineer would probably not put himself in that situation. So what I was trying to say is, sometimes we go to extreme lengths to show things that may not be needed, but that video got millions of shares and likes, and I think it's a good thing that people celebrate true science. I was in my son's school for a science fair, and they had this flasks, and they pour chemicals, and then suddenly foam comes out and goes everywhere, and you have green, blue, yellow foam flying, and everybody was screaming and laughing. Nobody cared to explain, one, what the chemical reaction was, two, how the colors were obtained. Most likely they were food colors. They could have used, blue for iron, or pink, pink with chromium or manganese and things like that, but they didn't. So it was more of a show than anything else. But the sad fact is, if you don't have a showmanship, nobody will come to a science fair in the first place. So I think I understand the need to do something like that. But again, for an engineer, the risk versus reward was definitely not there. The reward was minimal. Everybody understood the principles of science, but adding the showmanship, yes, that was the reward. The risk was fairly high, but as a society, I think, and I definitely struggle with this, because when I see parents in a swimming meet or athletics or any kind of sports, when their kids cut 2 seconds off a sprint, for example, they get extremely happy and they celebrate it and post it on Facebook or whatnot. There is no way for a parent to understand if their child cuts 2 seconds off of a mathematical calculation, for example, an integral equation of 4th degree, for example. Those are difficult, and if a child comes up with a different algorithm by himself, to me that's as good as cutting time off of one's athletic accomplishments. But there is no showmanship. There's no way one could take that and start screaming and post it on Instagram. So just something I thought about. We are at work, so I'll stop here.